ערב טוב, ערב טוב. אנחנו נחכה עוד כמה דקות, אנחנו נראה כאן את החברים עוד רגע, הם עולים לאט לאט. בינתיים אני אספר לכם שזה היום ה-17 לאתגר 21. אז אני רואה פה שהחברים עולים לאט לאט. אנחנו נתחיל עוד כמה דקות, עוד כמה שניות אפילו, כי התוכנית שלנו היא ארוכה ומעניינת. יופי, אנחנו לאט לאט עולים במספרים. כל הכבוד, לא לאחר. תודה. אני קטי ואני מאימהות נגד אלימות. ערב טוב. היום ה-17 לאתגר 21, וטוב, טוב לראות אתכם איתנו. זאת הודעת מנהלה. המרינה המתורגמנית שלנו כאן תתרגם את דבריי בעברית לדוברי האנגלית כרגע, ובהמשך כל השיחה תתנהל באנגלית. ומרינה תתרגם את השיחה של מו ומושון מאנגלית לעברית. יש הוראות התחברות לתרגום בצ'אט, מרינה כתבה את זה גם בעברית וגם באנגלית. בכל מקרה, אתם נכנסים לאינטרפריטיישן, זה צורת גלובס, ושם אתם בוחרים ללחוץ על המסך, לבחור בעברית ברגע שתתחיל ההופעה של ההרצאה, השיחה של מושון ומו. המפגש היום הוא אירוע מאוד מאוד מיוחד, שאנחנו ממש שמחות להיות הראשונות בישראל לשתף אותו איתכם ואיתכן. דיברנו במהלך כל השבוע האחרון, בשלושת הימים האחרונים בעצם, על הרגש כמנוע צמיחה והנאה לפעולה. והיום נדבר על חזון פוליטי ועל האפשרות והיכולת לדמיין עתיד באמצעות אומנות ועיצוב היכולים לחבר בין העולמות ישראל ופלסטין. מושון זר-אביב הוא מעצב, הוא מרצה ואקטיביסט מדיה מתל אביב. בעבודתו הוא בוחן את יחסי האהבה, שנאה שלנו עם דאטה ואת ההשפעה של עיצוב ואומנות על החיים החברתיים והפוליטיים שלנו. הוא מלמד מדיה דיגיטלית בשנקר, הוא משמש כמרצה בכיר בתחומי העיצוב והטכנולוגיה, ובימים אלה עובד על ספר הבוחן רעיונות, חיכוך וזרימה בתיאוריה עיצובית פוליטית לשינוי חברתי, וחבר מזכירות תנועת ארץ לכולם, שתי מדינות למולדת אחת. מו חוסייני הוא מעצב והאקטיביסט פלסטיני, המתמקד בקידום שיח פוליטי וחברתי באמצעות עיצוב ומדיה. עבודתו נוגעת בנושאים של זהות, זכויות אדם והשפעת התרבות הדיגיטלית על החברה. חוסייני פועל במסגרת מספר פרויקטים המשלבים בין אומנות ומדיה דיגיטלית כדי לעורר מודעות ולהביא לשינוי חברתי תוך התמקדות בהקשרים מקומיים והפוליטיים של המזרח התיכון. אני שמחה מאוד להציג אותם. ברגע זה אני יוצאת מהמסך והם יגיעו. תודה רבה לכם.
Zionism,
Jihad,
war crimes,
massacre,
genocide,
ethnic cleansing,
dead babies,
hostages,
torture,
rape,
colonialism,
anti-Semitism,
apartheid,
occupation,
racism,
resistance,
divine right,
international law,
freedom fighter,
terrorist,
indigenous,
Nakba,
Holocaust,
from the river to the sea,
the right of return,
freedom,
equality,
self-determination,
peace. Words aren't just vessels. They're containers. They're filled with meaning, emotion, intent, and they carry with them the weight of history. They shape our identities, and all too often they define the boundaries of conflict. The words that Mushon and I just shared with you are not neutral. No matter who you are, they're not neutral. No matter how you view the world, words like these are charged with the experiences of suffering and trauma and triumph and fear and hope. Each word on its own can conjure an entire world of pain and memory, or justice or injustice. But words are more than just descriptive. They're also prescriptive. They don't just tell us what has happened. They define our capacity to articulate and, more importantly, to move toward what might be. And that right there is the crux of the problem, because left unexamined, words are also traps. They can lock us into cycles of misunderstanding and deepen the enmity that we're trying to resolve. Because every time we speak, we risk reinforcing the barriers that divide us. Words can open your heart and they can harden your heart. They can shrink your imagination. They can limit the scope of what you think is possible. They can blind you to the humanity of the other side of any conversation. But here's the thing, words are also tools. They've got the capacity to bridge divides, to build new understanding, and to shape futures that haven't yet arrived, but that are so desperately needed. Words define the possible. They give form to what we can imagine. We struggle to envision a future without the right words that looks any different than the past. Let me give you a quick example. The ancient Greeks and many other ancient cultures never had a word for blue. It didn't exist as a word. But Homer describes the ocean in the Odyssey as the wine dark sea. They didn't understand it as we do today, even though it existed all around them in the sea and the sky. And it wasn't until they defined the concept of blue that they were able to understand it. And in a lot of ways, that's what we're talking about here, is defining a future with words so that we can start to understand it. That's how powerful language is. It gives us the ability to give something a name. And until we do that, it remains outside our understanding. And the same is true of our ability to envision and articulate the future. The words we use give shape to reality, and without them, the possibilities for the future remain blurry and out of reach. That's why being mindful of words, how you frame your thoughts, how they ripple out and shape perceptions is so important, because words create narratives, and those narratives shape our realities. They don't just describe our vision of the future, they define what we can collectively imagine as a society. They define how that vision is perceived, and ultimately they determine whether that vision can be realized. So today's session is really focused on the power of words, on how we speak, on how we listen, because speaking and listening are intertwined. The future that we want, the future that we yearn for, that Mushon and I are looking to be a part of, begins with the words that we choose today. And so our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to introduce ourselves. I'll share a little bit about myself. Mushon will do the same. And then we'll engage in this incredibly powerful exercise of political imagination that Mushon has developed. It's truly, I believe, a remarkable tool. It's one of those things where Mushon described it to me and was like, oh, okay, let's see it. And then when you see it, it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And it's a really smart way to kind of think about the future. It's a hands-on exercise, so we'll be asking for your participation. If you have access to a laptop, it would be great to do that. It's a good way to kind of engage with this. We'll be giving you guys a link to a Miro board. And after that, we'll open the floor for discussions where you can ask questions and you know, tell us how we were wrong. So to kick things off, let me introduce myself. My name is Mo Husseini. I'm a Palestinian-American writer, filmmaker, and all-round creative idiot. I live near Seattle. A lot of what I do as a creative is centered around exploring the future. As a designer, your work always has to be rooted in empathy. You've got to understand who you're designing for, understand people, what they need, and how they see the world, and what moves them, and what scares them, and what keeps them up at night, because that's what you're solving for. And as an introvert, an overly analytical one, I spend a lot of time thinking, and more specifically thinking about words, because for me, words aren't just the tools of my trade, they're vectors for imagination. They're tools of advocacy, and they're how we engage and elevate and move people. My final thing is I just wanted to make something clear and say that I'm not here as a representative of anybody or any group. I don't speak for anybody. I'm not a proxy. I'm here on my behalf as someone who is deeply frustrated by the lack of nuance in so many of the conversations around the Arab-Israeli conflict. I'm tired of zero-sum thinking, which seems to dominate everything when it comes to this conflict. And I'm here because I believe that it's critical that we start understanding the power of words, and that we learn how to listen to each other and how to talk to each other in ways that allow us to imagine a future where truths can coexist, where justice and peace aren't just ideals, but realities. So I'm here with Mushon to challenge narratives that lock us in place and help people see that only through dialogue and empathy and understanding can we move the world forward into a future that's more compassionate and understanding. And so with that, I will hand you over to the more eloquent, talented, and far more handsome Mushon Zer-Aviv. Sir.
I'm going to ignore the last comment because Palestinians and Israelis are arguing too much about what is true. So we won't do that here. But thank you, Mo, and thank you, Katie, and for inviting us to be a part of this amazing project. A few words about myself before I say a few extra words, and then we dive into the exercise. And I will repeat the recommendation to move from a mobile phone to a laptop if you have one handy. And if not, don't worry, you don't really have to be a part of the exercise to enjoy it as well. So we'll make it work however works for you. So my name is Mushon Zer-Aviv. I live in Tel Aviv. I actually live right above an anti-war protest that is happening right now. So you might hear it in my microphone every now and then. It's very, very loud, as it should be. I'm a designer and an activist and a writer, researcher. I'm a part of the board for Land for All, an organization, a joint Palestinian-Israeli peace movement that is trying to break the deadlock of the two-state solution and to move forward into a viable shared future. I will say a few words about that later, but from my perspective as a designer, for me, design is always about affecting the future. If it doesn't affect the world we live in, it's probably not design, or it's just failed design. So for me, through all of my career, it was a matter of trying to find what has impact and what delivers the world that my design tries to deliver. And the more I advanced in my career, I try to find ways for my design to really deliver the world that I want to live in, and the world that I wish for my children and for the people around me. And I must say, the world we found ourselves in is not that world. I see that as partly a design problem, and we'll get back to that when we get into the exercise. But I want to get back to October 7th, and I think especially in this group, I wouldn't be the first one to, the only one to feel like when we woke up at 6:30 in the morning, when the sirens went off all around Israel, the first response was, this is not happening. This is a mistake. And we've been through that in the past. It's never a mistake, but then, you know, you wake up into this reality that, oh, not this again. But little by little, we realize that this is not anything like anything that we've ever seen. And little by little, we understand that whatever we knew before is gone. And all of a sudden, we find ourselves in a present that doesn't fit the present that we had the day before. And the same way, the future is not what it used to be, as the song goes. And a response that I've heard all around me, and I felt really deeply in myself, is the statement, אני לא רואה עתיד. I can't see a future, right? And this idea of your present being snatched away, and then you have no idea how to move forward from there, is something that has been very indicative of this period in actually everything that since this government has been elected, like this feeling has been familiar for many people protesting against this horrible government even before October 7th, but definitely more so since October 7th. And Mo spoke a bit about empathy, and while I would like to see extended empathy, I'm quite concerned that empathy cannot easily expand, and especially not now. I feel like the two people are traumatized beyond any capacity for extended empathy across partisan lines, and while some of us may be able to little by little try to find some room for compassion, I'm afraid that the dynamics of empathy are ones that that make us close up, to stay within our own sides. So you know, cling to our loved ones that are around us, and to some degree, you know, there's a psychologist, Paul Bloom, that I read, that wrote a book called Against Empathy, and what he argues there is that empathy works as a spotlight, so it puts the one in the light and leaves the many in the dark. And I feel like, and he also speaks about the dynamics of empathy. We are much more likely to cast the light, to shed that spotlight on those who are around us, who look like us, who are close to us, who are familiar to us. And what's happening now is mutual dehumanization. But this is, I must say, as an Israeli, I don't feel like this. I feel I'm looking at my own responsibility and my own people, and I feel, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with us. Why are we unable to open our eyes? I've been thinking about this, that the two peoples are you can call it bloodshot eyes. Our eyes are shut with blood. But specifically, Israelis are really reliving this ongoing trauma and expanding and this expanding security threat. And any minute now, you know, a siren might break, and any Israeli in this call would have to run, and that would be the end of this call. And I hope that would not be the case, but this has become our reality, and it has been. It is already the reality in people in the north, and people in the north, and people in the south, and people in the north. In the north, I mean, in the Galilee area, in the north of Israel, and in north of that in Lebanon. And by south, I mean the south of Israel, around Gaza and within Gaza. And this is just too much for our emotional capacity. And to try to fit the other side in it is almost impossible. And if we add to that, you know, our disastrous, dysfunctional, corrupt, divisive, messianic, and supremacist government that really capitalizes on the dynamics of crisis here, this is, you know, a playbook and they're going by the authoritarian playbook of overwhelming the public to the level of submission. And this is what we're seeing. And at the same time, we're also witnessing the world's scorn and disgust at our collapse. And that is tearing the country apart from within and from outside. So we are overwhelmed by the present. And what we're seeing is that people on both sides and around the world are trying to dig into the past to justify the violence of the present, to justify to justify October 7th, to justify whatever happened before October 7th and after October 7th, and a lot of the discussion around what needs to happen here it constantly goes to 48, 67, you know, as if at some point in this God-forsaken Holy Land of ours, there was justice. There was a moment that was just, and we need to get back to it. As if our model for the future, for the just future, is some kind of a fantasy of the past. The past is not coming back. And don't get me wrong, the past is full of injustice. And we can point at numerous injustices in the past. But that is not the model for building a just future. And what we need to do, despite the fact that we're overwhelmed by the present, we have to find a way to identify justice in the futures. And by futures, I mean plural. Now, the principles that I'm using for a just future are the ones that me and my colleagues at Land for All, לכולם, is, you know, 2 states, 1 homeland. What do we mean by that? 2 states, like you've known it since the 90s, since Oslo. So 2 independent states, 2 democratic states. Israelis would be voting for an Israeli parliament. The Palestinians would be voting for a Palestinian parliament. The 2 states would have separate borders, separate citizenships. There would be one of the things that we often say is that one thing that Israelis and the Palestinians widely agree on is that they're not the same people, and beyond that, Palestinians deserve the right to find out who they are when they're not being occupied. And Israelis have the right to find out who they are, who we are, when we're not occupying. We don't know who we are outside of this framework of occupation and security danger and so on. And for that we need two states. But there is another thing that many, and I would say most Israelis and Palestinians agree or feel similarly. They feel like this is their land, from the river to the sea. And that's why we talk about one homeland. And that's why these two states would have to have open borders, as much as it's hard to imagine right now. We would not solve one injustice by creating another. We would want to see a solution that allows people with a deep spiritual and ancestral connection to the whole land to continue living and traveling and studying and worshiping and whatever, anywhere in between the river and the sea. And for that we cannot try to repeat the failed model of Oslo, the separation based model, like Ehud Barak said, they are there and we are here. It's not, it doesn't work like that. That's how he also got to the no partner solution. What we are talking about is a partnership-based peace, not a separation-based peace. And that's why what we are advocating is a confederation, a confederation model, not unlike the European Union. Today it's not weird to come across a German living in Paris, or a French living in Berlin, but we have to remember that less than a century ago, these two peoples killed more of each other than Israelis and Palestinians ever lived. Okay, and that is. And we have to remember that we study history. The reason we study history is to understand the dynamics of the future, right? That the future can change. Change is possible, but for that we need to think more widely. And I think that's a good time to do exactly that. So I will share a few slides, and I'll present to you the methodology that we would like to try with you. And because we have a few more minutes, I will also share a reference for you from a previous project by colleagues of ours. So I will share my screen now. Let's hope the god of screen sharing is nice to us. 1 second. Here we go. So I can see a future, and for me at least, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I've turned not to a priest, but to an author and a poet called Rebecca Solnit, who wrote this book, Hope in the Dark. And when Rebecca Solnit talks of hope being in the dark, she doesn't mean that hope is in a dark and scary place, in an evil place. In fact, what she argues is that hope locates itself in the premises that we don't know what will happen, and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty is room to act. So the darkness, the not knowing, that is the only place where hope can actually live. And for me, being a very rational person and very, I'm working a lot with data and trying to, really stick to the ground. This has allowed me to this concept has lifted me off this the ground that either way has become, it's burning, and gave me some air to breathe. And this idea of spaciousness, of uncertainty, is something that we're going to experience a bit today with the exercise. Now, another thing that I've done right after October 7th is call my friends from New York, from Steve Lambert from the Center for Autistic Activism, and Jacques Servin from the Yes Men. And we have been talking about political imagination for many years, and especially since 2008, when they ran this project, which I'm going to show you now. I'll show you a short video clip from a newspaper that they published just a few days after Obama was elected. The days are the days of the Iraq War, and after 8 years of Bush. So this is the context.
We needed a really ambitious plan, because all we ever read in the newspapers was how we needed to put everything back on track, back to how it was before it fell apart. But how it was the problem. We needed to show what real change could look like. So together with a whole lot of friends, we would blanket Manhattan with 100,000 copies of our very own newspaper. We'd call it the New York Times. Except our New York Times would be a little bit different. Ours would be set 6 months in the future. It would show what could happen if we set our imagination free.
Things have gotten pretty bad, and I think it's hard for people to imagine the world working another way. So we're trying to, as realistically as possible, present this world as it could be.
They just brought out the proof of the New York Times, and it looks unfucking believable. Really good.
The obvious question, how the heck did you do it? Andy, you want to start? How long were you working on this thing, and how many of you?
Well, there were a lot of us. It wasn't just the Yes Men, it was a large group of people. We were just one of many groups. It was an idea that sparked a lot of people's imaginations. They wanted to see this happen. And that's sort of the message of the paper as well, is that, great, we elected Obama, and that's fantastic, but now the real work begins.
The idea was to put out something that was optimistic, that says, we can do all these things. Why not? We created the system that we have now, so why not create a good one instead?
Wow, very good. Here, let me tie you up. This is the big day. 7 a.m. rush hour. This is the time to get the papers out there.
Three times. Special issue. Special issue.
3 New York Times. Edition of the New York Times. 3 New York Times. This is real?
It's fake, right?
Who publishes this? Can I grab another one, please? What? New York Times.
National Health Insurance Act passes.
The Patriot Act repealed.
Maximum wage law succeeds. Good luck with that one.
This is too good to be true, but it's not impossible.
It's a dream newspaper, right? It's like you wake up and all the things that you wanted became the news.
The war's over! Our fake news was a hit. But would the real news pick it up?
You don't work for the New York Times. Who is it that you work for handing this out?
A guy named John Smith?
who?
Yeah, John Smith.
John Smith.
It's a New York Times special edition. Is there anything wrong with it? I mean...
Well, yeah, it's not the New York Times.
Extra, extra, read all about it. The New York Times declares the war in Iraq is over.
Some commuters got their hands on what looks like a special edition of the New York Times. As you might have guessed, though,
It's a fake.
Eine New York Times in die Hand gedrückt bekamen, trauten jedenfalls ihren Augen nicht.
Джордж Буш отдан под суд, а Кондолиза Райс приносит официальные извинения за недостоверную.
We printed a paper with the headlines that we'd like to see. So if these are the headlines that people were so excited to read this morning, let's make them happen.
I think we have to exercise some muscles we either don't have or that have atrophied or something, a civic muscle, a thrifty muscle, a generous muscle.
We've got to take back our government. March into City Hall and say, here, we've got the solutions.
We can think of the different ways that we can contribute to a movement that says business as usual is unacceptable because people are being hurt and we're not going to play the role, the subservient, routine role that we usually play.
Let's go.
Yeah. So what is this? What is this project? Is it science fiction? Ursula K. Le Guin, one of the greatest science fiction authors who ever lived, wrote that the role of the science fiction writer is to take a trend in the here and now, purify and intensify it for dramatic effect, and extend it into the future. So if this goes on, this is what will happen. So this is kind of extrapolating from the present through the imagination. But I'm personally not a science fiction author. Maybe some of you are. I'm a designer, so I'm looking at a different practice called design fiction. And design fiction doesn't tell stories. Instead, it designs prototypes that imply a changed world. So think about it as archaeological artifacts from the future. When we find an archaeological artifact from the past and we don't have access to what actually happened there, we try to imagine the world around that artifact. Design fiction works the same way, but with trying to build narratives through an artifact, so-called from the future. Now, despite the fact that Mo and I are designers, we are not going to do much design today, and it's not about the artifacts. It is about the future, or rather the futures in plural. So when we're looking at the New York Times special edition that had so many different futures and different hopeful futures, what is it? Is it science fiction? Is it a design fiction, or maybe somewhere in between? And I think the format that we're going to use is going to be similar. But it's not going to be a newspaper. It's actually going to be another thing that we indeed experience a lot of fiction through. And you have it probably in your pocket in this moment, or you're staring at it right now, your phone. This channel for fiction and arguably for some truth, or kind of hopeful representations of the truth. But for us, that's going to be the format for imagination. So we're going to take screenshots from futures and think of a notification. Maybe you just got a notification saying that somebody liked your Instagram image. Congratulations. But what if that notification was on someone's phone in some future, and what would it say? Would it be from the New York Times or Ynet, or would it be from your fitness app or whatever? And what would that say? Would it be you? Would it be your grandchild or someone you don't even know and you just imagine? This would be the format for us to imagine futures, and we're going to create quite a few of them. So the way it's going to work, so the format is the screenshot. And we're going to focus on this place, on whatever is happening between the river and the sea. And I'll just go through the formats real quick, and then I'll show you, we'll share a link where you'll be able to work on that. So we have social media posts. So somebody writing a post from the future, a chat between two or more people in the future, a notification like we mentioned, sent in the future, a question that someone sent a future AI assistant. Now, in this case, you don't need to know a lot about AI. It's just like a question that somebody has in the future. In this case, we're much more interested in the question than in the answer. A map of the region in the future, and we can draw on this map if you want, and a picture taken in the future, and if you want, you can paste an image or you can draw, and this would be the formats through which we will be imagining different futures. Now, you might have noticed that there's this bar at the bottom of each one of these screenshots. That's where you're going to write the title of a transition period. What do I mean by transition period? Something has happened in that future, and we're interested in finding out what is this thing that happened. Maybe it's a peace process. Maybe it's a civil war. Maybe it's just somebody got married or somebody moved to another place. You decide what is this thing that made that future different, right? That would be the title for the transition period. And then we'll try to ask, was this screenshot taken before the transition period, during the transition period, or after the transition period? Don't worry if this sounds too much. We'll be around, and you can ask us questions in the comments. But this is pretty much the exercise. So I will stop sharing this presentation now, and instead we're going to share a link. So there's a link waiting for us in the resources, and I will turn it on now, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. So you should have a kind of a pop-up saying political imagination X, as in exercise. That's a link that would take you to a Miro board. Now, Mo, do you want to share the Miro board, or should I?
Why don't you go ahead and share it, since
Sure.
you have
Yeah.
probably more access than I do.
No problem. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see some of you are already there. So I will share my Miro board. So this is, you don't actually need to be here. You can, you don't need to watch the screen on Zoom. You're welcome to get into the Miro board, and within the Miro board, you will see that there are workspaces. I'm zooming on one right now, and the first thing you need to do is to put your name, and whatever name you want. You can if you don't want to use your real name, you can use a different name. But just claim your board so nobody writes screenshots for you. So you just double click the black post-it, and you type your name there. So I can show I'm typing Mushon here, and that's my board. And you can just find one of the other boards and choose it. If you have problems zooming in and zooming out, you have plus and minus here, and you can hit space, the space bar, and then your cursor turns into a hand, and you can drag the screen like that. It works like a map, basically. It's this is a shared whiteboard. That's why we're seeing all of the cursors running around. So we're all in the same virtual space now. And I can see some of you already chosen their board. Now I'll show you how the templates work. So you have 6 templates, like I showed you before. And if you want to write to change the text, you just click until it's selected. Click, 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 click until it's selected, and I can write. I wish I could go outside more often for protests like in the bad old days. So it can be as simple as that. And then I can write a name. Could be my name, it could be a different name. So it's I'm Simcha. I don't know who that is, but that's a guy. By the way, you can write in whatever language you want, but probably most people would understand English in this call. And in the transition period, I would write whatever I think that happened. So I'll be very unimaginative, and I'll just say peace. And I will drag this circle. I selected it and I drag it to post. Say that this has happened after peace. So this is an example of working on a template. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to create a few of these templates, and I'll put some music.
It better be good music, Mushon. I'm judging you.
I have noticed, and I am stressed now. Can you hear the rain?
You hear the rain. Nice.
Okay. I'm going to be quiet now and let you work. And if you have any question, just write in the chat and we'll try to help you.
I left Decatur, hell bent to forget. Bought a ticket to Skowhegan, Maine. I wound up in Seattle, so drunk and so rattled. Lord, I'd caught the wrong train. Found some fast, easy women and some hard drinking men. Swore I'd drown a sorrow in me. I once had a lot, but the future was not what it used to be. All the years, they went by, and I went steadily downhill till I had no place left to go. Made the missions by morning, made the dives every night, till I made a wreck of my body and soul. And then I met a lady, and in time she made me forget. Her love set me free. Oh, we didn't have a lot, but the future was not what it used to be. I never thought I would live to get old. Oh, the past cut a hole deep in me. But there was the chance to be here a while longer. At least I want it to be. Somebody told me she was in town. I found out today. Lord, how it hurts me to hear that she's down. But what else can I say? I know her sorrow, I know her pain. I know her need. I once loved her a lot, but the future's just not what it used to be.
Okay, perfect timing, if I may add. I will get back to the slides to show you what we're going to do with this next. So I will do this like that. Okay, so sharing my screen is something that I do here. Okay, so you're seeing that, right? So so you created the screenshots, maybe even more than one. And now some of the screenshots that you created may have been preferred, but I definitely, we can definitely deal with the ones that are, not preferred, ones that we would like to prevent. And we have different clips for them. So we will clip the preferred futures in blue and the prevent futures in red. And in case our futures would have a bit of both, we can use two clips. So, but what are we doing with this clip? For that, we'll need to talk a bit about the futures cone. So when we're talking about the future, it's important to remember that everything that we do, when we imagine futures, we're doing that in the present. And our interest with political imagination is to understand what is the potential of the moment. What can the moment bring? And often when we imagine the future, we imagine it as a line that continues directly into the future with scare quotes, like you can see here. Why is it? Why am I using scare quotes? Is because this is us imagining that there's there's a line between the past and the future, and we just continue along the lines. What we actually mean by the future is a projection, like something that we're pretty certain that is going to happen. If there's one thing that you should take from our session today is that the future doesn't exist. Become very, very suspicious every time you hear the term the future, because the only thing that the future is a plurality of possibilities. It's always futures in the plural, right? So we know that we know that to some degree, and that's why we often think of the future as kind of an opening of probability, right? Some things that may happen. So some things that are projected and kind of certain, like the sun would rise tomorrow, and unfortunately, I could say there would not be a ceasefire today. That's pretty projected, but some things are probable, and you know, they look pretty certain, but you know, not certain for sure, but pretty certain. But we can expand our perspective even wider and realize that some things are plausible. You know, it might be not the first thing they thought about, but they completely make sense. And in retrospect, you know, it was clear that something like that can happen, right? Like I would say everything that is happening in the North right now. I would, but we have to expand even wider than that and understand that there's a wider angle to look at the possible. And the possible means, by the possible, we mean things that we really didn't think about. But in retrospect, they were never impossible. Unfortunately, October 7th is one of them. And some of us have actually realized for many years that this is not even plausible, but it's probable in some point if there is no alternative, if there's no if the occupation continues, doesn't justify it in any way. I'll clarify that, but we have to understand, especially and it's easier in retrospect, that something like that was possible, despite the fact that we didn't allow ourselves to realize that. And wider than that is what we would call the preposterous. These are the things that we consider impossible, right? For some reason, it seems like most of our fiction and most of our interest in futures have to be around the preposterous, and emotionally, you know, it makes sense because futures that are impossible are those that don't really mean that we need to change anything in our present, and that's why we enjoy them so much. There's something relieving about knowing that this is only entertainment. It has nothing to do with how I should see the prospects of my life. But we are actually interested in what we're seeing as preposterous versus possible, plausible, probable, and projected. And for that, we're interested in screenshots that would be preferred, right? This would be these glimpses into the future that we would like to see. But we're also interested in the ones that are prevent, the ones that we would like to prevent. We would like to act in the present to make sure that would not be the future that we address. And it's important that we actually find ourselves in. And it's important to understand that political imagination is not only about rosy images of the future. It's more than that. And if we jump back to our mirror board, which I will do right now, you will see that if you zoom out, and you can use the minus here at the bottom for that, if you zoom out, you can see we have a huge futures cone under your workspaces. And what and we would like you to do is to do what somebody already here did, maybe by accident, which is to, and so I'll remove it from here because apparently it's not full, but to drag one of your futures, or even more than one if you created more than one of your screenshots into the futures cone, and try to place it either in the projected line, projected cone, the probable cone, the plausible cone, the possible cone, or the preposterous cone. Now, as far as closer to the present or closer to or further into the future, if you've created a screenshot that happens before your transition period, place it around here. if it's during the transition, place it around here. And if it's after the transition, place it around here. Now, if that is complicated or you have technical problems or anything, again, ask us in the chat. Apparently Mo's ideas are always preposterous, but Mo, as you know, it's a matter of perspective. But we are interested in your perspective. So nobody's going to tell you that if you think that your ideas are probable, none of us would tell you that they're preposterous. We are interested in how you imagine the space of possibility. No. Okay? So once you place it, we would love to start reading them and maybe getting you to join us and tell us a bit about it as well. So if any of you needs help with dragging your screenshots, let us know. You would probably need to zoom out a bit. Yes, I see. The visiting inventor is already dragging something into the, still deciding. There's another one here. Within the transition period in the projected. Now, another thing that I forgot to mention that we would love for you to drag one of the clips and use that to hang, so-called, to hang your screenshot. You can simply copy and paste. So if it's red, that would mean that it's prevent, and if it's blue, it's preferred. So you can, I'll just give you an example. I'll copy both of them for a second. So copy, I'll do it like they do it in like that. Copy, zoom out, and I go to this one, which is empty. So I will go to this one. So I see that something jumped out, but hey, so free government-funded update to our binational compassion check-in app, CCA. It's quick and it's easy, and it includes just a few moments of your day to do the compassion exercise. Together we can keep our beautiful confederation going in great directions that benefit all. That is, that looks like pretty hopeful, and I'm suspecting that this is a at least considered a preferred future. So if let's see who made this. Maybe you can write in the chat, and we can have you join us. I see some of you have some technical problems in the chat, and we'll try to help you. Don't worry about that. We'll get everyone on the Futures Cone.
I just sent a note to everybody. If you're having trouble with the Miro is not the message. Really what we're trying to do is discuss the possible future. So if you're having trouble with the Miro, please feel free to put your projected future in the chat, and we can talk about it through there. And just note at the bottom whether you think it's something that's probable or projected or preposterous or whatever, and kind of place it in terms of pre-transition, transition, post-transition. You can replicate it essentially in text for us to be able to talk to each other.
So Ilana, I see this is your screenshot. Would you mind talking to us about it, telling us about it? We can allow you to speak. Let's see. Because we are all powerful.
I've got it.
Got it?
I think so. Hold on. I'm not sure how I can promote somebody here. I'm not sure we are
allowed to talk.
Okay, there you go.
Ilana, you're allowed to talk.
Hi, Ilana.
We can't hear you very well, I must say. Unfortunately, we can't hear you very well. Ilana, unfortunately, we can't hear you. It might be a connection thing, but maybe you can write it in the chat. Can you? Yeah. So Ilana is writing. Yeah, unfortunately, the audio is not working for us. So we're going to unfortunately mute you now because we can't hear anything. I'm going to just read what you wrote in the chat. That Ilana writes, Ilana Axel, this popped into my mind as soon as you introduced the exercise. Been thinking about the future for a while now. I have been following Elen for a while, so I have been thinking about the long game for a while. Very encouraged to work with you both. So we are very encouraged by your input as well. Yeah, so she's adding, I needed to go to the fun today because I am miserable otherwise. So thank you for the hope and thank you. I'm really looking forward to see a post like this after the aggressive election cycle. So I think back to the point about the using these clips. I think Ilana, you would agree that it's very positive, but it also implies that the aggressive election, that the elections, that election cycle that preceded that may be aggressive. So I think there's both hope and some concern in your screenshot, and we really appreciate that. She adds, it implies that the future needs to be nurtured continuously at all time, and definitely agree. Let's thank you, Ilana. Mo, do you wanna have you found something else that we would want to go to next?
I have been furiously reading different ones. Let's see. There's one over here that is, I don't see a name. It's all the way on the left of you.
Okay, all the way on the left. So we're going to
right there.
Is it all the okay? So it's in the during transition, right?
Yep. And it's
we have that.
Netanyahu ousted. New center-left government pushes for immediate and lasting peace, and it is a preferred outcome here.
So
does anyone want to speak? Oh, it looks like that is Heather. I don't have access to give people speaking. Do you want to do that?
So I will do that. Heather is allowed to speak.
Hi, Heather.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was mine. That was just the first thing that came to mind. I felt a little bit like I needed more than 5 minutes to be really creative. but in terms of thinking about the news we wish we would wake up reading, that certainly was first on my mind.
As I mentioned, we're working on it. I don't know if we're making progress, but we are working on it.
We have.
I put it in, you know, I like to be optimistic, so I put it in the space of the probable, possible, near future.
Yes. So it's between the plausible and the possible, and I would like it would happen at some point. But what would happen until then? And I think that's
I think the first part is more likely than the second part at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This exact moment in time.
I agree.
It looks like someone put one in the chat, Mushon, as well. It says the overnight train from Haifa to Baghdad is now boarding. Enjoy your ride. I can't read the Hebrew, so I can't call out that person. So
Dalia Shacham. Let's get Dalia in the call. Dalia, you're allowed to speak if you want, and as you're doing that, I will quickly add you to the board here, and I'm assuming that this is that a future you would want to see, Dalia?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Hi, thank you for this. Yes, it's, you know, there was a past like that. It was in the past. There were trains going. So, and yes, as a denizen of Haifa, with roots, family roots in Baghdad, yes, I would definitely want to see that future.
And
I tried to, if I could use my mouse, which is not working now, I would have dragged it to like the far future, but possible.
So it's possible, and it's preferred.
It is.
And if we talk about transition periods, what needs to happen for that to take place?
I think what I put in in that box was open borders.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's write open borders. And this is happening before the open borders, during the open borders, after the open borders.
This is after.
Yeah. So let's drag
This is
this
after. It's a
here.
result.
Yep.
Yeah.
And thank you. And you know, I've been running this exercise for quite a few times, and in most cases we do that face to face. I'll show you some pictures from here so you can see. We actually do it on paper, and we have this kind of funny looking futures cone in actual clips. And almost in any of these futures, and maybe I can actually find this here, there is someone who wishes to go on a train in the Middle East.
I think anyone who you know, who has knowledge of the past and like a desire for peace, that's like the one thing that's just mind-boggling, you know, that it was here 80 years ago.
Yeah.
It was here.
Yeah, I always talk about the idea of boring borders. Like that's what I wish for. You know, I live in the US, and we have boring borders between the states, right? Like it's just a sign by the side of the road, you know, like Washington and Oregon don't really fight with each other. You know, the conflicts that they have with each other are deeply boring. You know, they're the kinds of things that you know, policy people might be interested in, but for the vast majority of human beings, they're immaterial and they don't really affect your perception of either side. And I think that, you know, for me, my dream is very similar. It's this idea of just boring borders, that you know, that hopping in a car and driving from Tel Aviv to Cairo is just a boring car ride. Like there's nothing much more than.
No, it's beautiful. It goes through Sinai.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Mo, maybe you can point us at another. I'll follow you. So
okay, let's find another one.
And while you're finding another one, I want to read Dan Koren's comment.
Yeah.
So Dan is writing. The question is if, besides the Israeli government, also the Palestinian Authority will be ready to reach an agreement without demanding again and again the right of return. I can address that, but do you want to address it first?
Yeah, look, I think a lot about this conflict to me is inverted. And I think that we, the best metaphor that I've come up with is it's people trying to fix a very tall building, and all the problems that everybody wants to talk about are on the 65th floor. You know, and it's like, where are we going to put the conference room in the penthouse? And, you know, where are we going to do this and that and this other thing? And I view things like the right of return and the settlements and all these other things as being second, third, or fourth order problems, because I actually think that the fundamental problems are far more foundational. The fundamental problems are grounded in a refusal to see, acknowledge, or hear the other. And I think that that is true on both sides. Is the right of return an issue? Yeah, absolutely. Are the settlements an issue? Absolutely. Is Jerusalem an issue? Absolutely. Like, these are all issues. They are all very real issues that absolutely have to be sorted out. That I think that fundamentally what needs to be sorted out first is an acknowledgement on both sides. And like on both sides that we are giving up magical thinking, right? And what I mean by that is, you know, very often I will have conversations with, this tends to particularly happen in the diaspora, but like diaspora Jews or diaspora Palestinians, and they indulge in magical thinking, right? Like there's this, like, they can all go back to, you know, Jordan or Poland or, you know, like this nonsense that the other side has no connection to the land, that the other side has no legitimacy at all, that the other side is purely evil, and that there's no nuance in the math. I just, look, I'm not trying to avoid Dan's question. I think Dan's question is a critical question, but I think it's a second or third order question. We have not even gotten to a place where the majority of both cultures, and I don't mean people like you and people like me who are able to kind of sit down and have a conversation, but I'm saying that the majority of both cultures just view a basic human legitimacy on the other side. And to me, that's the foundational work. So I hope that's enough of an answer for you, Dan, but I'm happy to be challenged if not.
I think I'm going to challenge you, Mo. And maybe I think it's not too early to ask this question. It's not too early to ask about the right of return. It's not too early to talk about settlements. It's not too early to talk about Jerusalem. And maybe if we've learned something from Oslo is that we waited with some of the critical questions to the end, and then the end never came. The end of the negotiation, and what we're trying to offer with the Land for All is not something that would, you know, that will only sit with the Palestinians when they finally give up on the right of return. I don't think Palestinians should give up on the right of return the same way that I don't think that Israelis should give up on their right of return. זכות השיבה. the approach that we're taking with a land for all is that Palestinians will be allowed to return to live between the river and the sea as citizens of the Palestinian state, but not only within the borders of the Palestinian state, and that is the answer that we have for settlements as well. So settlements, and many of my cousins are settlers, and everything they know is on these hills, and they are deeply connected to these parts of the Holy Land, and for them, they would like to continue living there. Now they will have to give up on a lot of things. First and foremost, Jewish supremacy. But in the future that we're trying to promote, there will be room for people living anywhere between the river and the sea, as citizens of one of the two states. Mo?
I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that these aren't important conversations to be having. My concern, and I think that this actually goes back to Oslo, and thank you for that reference, is that we have developed a way of thinking about this conflict that almost wants to stop everything from moving until we resolve everything. You know what I mean? Like there's there's an all or nothing thinking approach to all, I love your analogy, and it's the second time I've heard it, of, the idea that France and Germany right now, it's like, yeah, France, Germany, like nobody cares, right? Like they're Europeans and they're annoying in their own different ways, like every country. But fundamentally, there's no real conflict beyond soccer, right? Or football, as the rest of the world calls it. That took time, right? Like like they didn't resolve everything between France and Germany over a weekend, right? Like it takes time to get to boring borders. It takes time to get to move from hot war to friendly rivalry. And I think that my concern a lot with questions like the settlements and questions like the right of return and all of that is a lot of the time they're thrown into the argument as a way to stop forward motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me saying they're not important. It's not me saying we shouldn't talk about them now. It's me saying that we shouldn't wait for these things to be developing a political culture of recognition and acknowledgement and of seeing the other in ways that are humane.
Thanks. Let's because we only have a few minutes left, and we want to address a few more screenshots. Mo, do you want to let's do a dramatic reenactment of this chat in front of us?
Go ahead.
So I'll play the me. I've missed you. Want to meet for coffee? Go for a movie?
Sure. We'll just jump in the shower. We'll meet you in 30 minutes in Jerusalem.
Word. So this is After Peace. By the way, some of you have your microphone on, and we can hear you. So please, yeah. So we'll have to. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Gary. Who made this one?
Galia.
That's Galia.
Galia.
Okay.
Galia.
And Galia is with us, right?
Yes.
We can hear you.
You can promote her to speaking role.
Me, Dalia, and I can't mute. So that's Dalia with a D, and then there's Galia with a G.
Okay, so I'm going to invite Galia with a G, and we will invite Dalia with a D. to maybe
I think you can mute on your end, Mushon.
I'll try to do that.
I'm Galia with a G.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for this fun exercise. It took me too long to figure out how to work with this tool, so I didn't really have time to come up with something too creative, and then I just kind of went with my heart, and I just thought, like, you know, on a personal level, people who I know and like, and who I've met and come to like and love, and just being able to meet and just have like just normal, you know, personal relationships and connections and make them be easy. I live near Jerusalem, and you know, geographically, it shouldn't be hard to meet Palestinian friends easily, but it's just so impossible. And I think that would be really nice to to make it possible.
Yeah, it's a bitter irony for me that it is far easier for me to engage with my Israeli friends in the US than it is in the Middle East. Everything about it makes no sense in my brain, and you know, it's nuts. I share your wish.
Thank you.
I think you know, in the previous session like that Mo and I did, it was attended by my friend Fadi, and Fadi is from Beirut, and is a very dear friend of mine. And when I lived in New York for a while, Fadi lived in Montreal, and one weekend, me and my partner went to visit Fadi and Muna up north, and we took the bus from New York, and we traveled, and we passed the border, and we reached our Lebanese friends, and we spent the weekend. It was amazing, and I think apart beyond the fact that we were really good friends, a part of what made it so amazing is how simple it was, and how much sense it made, and how important it is that we make this happen in our homes, right? And
Yeah.
this is back to the point about trains and about movement and about you know, but I would say another thing. We need to. We have Palestinian. Not all of the Palestinians are beyond our reach, and both either physically or digitally. Part of the work that we need to do, like, and maybe this is a good opportunity to say that when we have more time, the next step here would be to go back into the present and say, what needs to happen in the present to make this future more probable, to get to the point where we can drag this further down, even to the level of obvious, because it should be obvious, right? What do we need to do right now to have these relationships, and to make these relationships not a fantasy, but a reality?
Can I intrude with something? Because I think it's something that I think a lot about, and Galia's future kind of popped it back to mind for me. I don't think it's an accident. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's an accident that we make it hard, not we, but that our governments, that the organizations make it hard for Israelis and Palestinians to meet each other. I don't think it's an accident that we make it hard, because I think that there's it is, excuse my language, it is really fucking hard to be an asshole to someone who is right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like it takes being an asshole. Like it takes really digging down and wanting to be cruel and wanting to be unpleasant, right? Like as humans, we tend to want to get along. And I think that the separation is on purpose. I think the separation makes it very easy for me to go, oh, the people behind that wall, they're animals, or they're baby killers, or they're whatever the hell it is that we're saying about the people on the other side of the wall. And I think that futures like the future that Galia presented, while they might seem boring, or to use Galia's language, not very creative, I think are deeply powerful. I think the normalization of this idea that your friend is just going to hop in a car and be in Jerusalem in 30 minutes, and everything is just going to be normal. Like I think that is deeply threatening to the kinds of structures that want conflict.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Thank you. We are out of time, actually.
No matter how much time we add on this, we run out.
Yeah. It's but I'll take just a few moments to. First of all, we are going to read all of these and to comment on all of these, and we'll do that even if it doesn't happen live. We're going to use this comment feature. So if I click on that, you should have this comment feature too, and then I can zoom in and I'll read, for example, פרס נובל משותף לחוקרים מישראל ולחוקרים מאוניברסיטת פלסטיניות. תלמידי תיכון יוצאים לשבוע ראשית בישראל, ותלמידים ישראלים יוצאים לשבוע במקביל בפלסטין. I'll translate, or maybe this is being translated live, but I'll do it as well. A Nobel Prize, a shared Nobel Prize for researchers from Israel and researchers from Palestinian universities. School students go for a week, first in Israel, and Israeli students go for a parallel week in Palestine. So I will not comment on this here, but I'll show you that the way we will comment on this is we'll use the comment tool, we'll click, and then we will write something here, and all of you can do that. And over the next 2 days, I would say, Mo and I commit to do that, even though Mo has big week ahead of him, but at least I will do that. So definitely come back to this link. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of something. I actually brought up another slide deck with a quote that I thought makes sense for the conversations we had. So I would like to offer that as a final thought from me, and then I'll pass it to Mo. So I'll do that quickly. And okay, that didn't work. Wait. Okay. So I'll try to share it again. Sorry about that. Okay. So only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And this is, I find this to be a very, very inspirational quote, which I read in a book by Naomi Klein. But to tell you the truth, this is not a quote from Naomi Klein. This is a quote from, the book is The Shock Doctrines. This is a book from Milton Friedman, and Milton Friedman and Naomi Klein couldn't be further apart politically. When Milton Friedman wrote this quote, he was actually talking about, Milton Friedman is a neoliberal economist and thinker, and he was talking about using crisis as a way of pushing economic change against democratic rules. Milton Friedman, at least in Naomi Klein's analysis, represents using crisis as a way of overruling democracies and overruling the will of the people. And what we're seeing today with the Milton Friedmans of the world, with the Sinwars of the world, and the Netanyahus of the world, and you know, so many of them, they keep on throwing crisis at us because they have no other way to make their futures come about. That we have something that is stronger than theirs, which is we want to live, and we want to live in security, and we want to live in peace, and we want freedom of movement, and we want freedom of culture and freedom and right to self-determination, and that would never die. They would have to keep on throwing crisis at us, but we would not let them, and that keeps me hopeful.
I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that I think that it's really easy to fall into cycles of blame and retribution, but that ultimately it's a trap. And that the more we view each other as enemies, the harder it becomes to imagine a future where peace is possible. And what gives me hope about meetings like this, about the conversations that I've been having over the past few months, is helping people see that peace is possible, that by acknowledging pain and the humanity on both sides, we can define a future where this conflict doesn't have to define us forever. I've been, Mushon just mentioned that I've got a big week. I'm premiering a documentary that I've been working on with Julie Cohen this week called The Path Forward. And I've had the honor of meeting and spending a lot of time with Aziz Abu Sara and Mo Husseini. And something they said has really stuck with me, which is this, we can forgive the failures of the past. We can forgive the failures of the present, but we can never forgive the failures of the future, because we have the power to prevent and change those. And that's what it's about. That's what this whole session is about. That's what I think all the conversations that you know, Moaz and I have been trying to kind of put together. It's this idea that we can define that future and use words to describe that world and shape it. And especially in conflicts like this, words can either trap us or help us heal. And that healing begins with acknowledgement. It begins with recognizing that suffering exists for everyone. There is, you know, there's not 1 milligram of weight more behind an Israeli life or a Palestinian life. There is value in each human being, and by recognizing that suffering exists for everyone and not assigning blame or defending perspectives, but making sure that people are seen and heard, that's how we get difficult truths to coexist. And that means not just speaking like I am right now, but listening, right? Like really listening, because ultimately words can be walls, or they can be bridges. And I think what Mushon and I have been focusing on is the idea of building bridges and asking for your help to help flip that script that is zero sum right now. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody, but I promise none of the screenshots would be left uncommented. And thank you very much. And keep the hope and the criticism.
Thank you all.